Hello everyone and welcome to another episode of Larong Atin. Well, actually, the Asian Board Games Festival Philippines podcast. Today with us, we are joined by Titus Villanueva and again, so I'm Dwayne. From Larong Atin and now also representing ABGF and then uh, Sir Freddy.
Hello. Hello. Good evening, everyone. We hope everybody has a pleasant evening tonight. And if you're here, please feel free to post questions and ask or just say hi.
And then our guest, Titus. Could you
Mhm.
introduce yourself?
Hi
So
everyone. I'm Titus Villanueva. I am the author of One of Us Will Die, and we are going live on Kickstarter on 5 days. It's been a very long journey, and I'm actually very happy to say that Larong Atin on Pub, the general tabletop community, has always been with us the whole way. I think I'm gonna mention later. Sir Freddy was actually one of our first playtesters during an unpub session that took place, I think, a couple of years ago na. It's been a
yeah,
while.
medyo matagal na nga yun eh. Yeah, it's been
Yeah,
a while. It's been a long journey for this game,
really
which is
long.
actually one of quite unique. You know, 2 years ago na ba yun? Parang, yeah, but yeah, it feels like
It
yeah.
feels like 2 years ago. I don't know how long it actually was, but it feels like 2 years ago.
It might not be though. I'm not sure.
It might not be.
Yeah. But yeah, I although I don't know if it's actually an pub or a special session. I think parang talagang wasn't talagang nag-meet tayo for it eh.
Actually, I'm pretty sure it was a normal session because there were a lot of other people testing
Mm,
their games out then. So
mm,
I I put together a very short 15-minute demo of the game,
yeah.
and what was really funny nga is Sir Freddy's character died in the in the scenario, as you know, as you do in this game. Uh, it was a kind of World War II esque
Yeah.
uh, military drama where his
Mhm.
character went down in a hail of bullets, trying to, and then he turned the tide of the battle. They all started shouting his name and firing back at the enemy, and that was basically their scenario at that point.
Mhm.
Now we've had so many sessions, so many stories, so
Yeah.
many deaths that a lot of people really remember.
Yeah, and the current version has several scenarios, right? And iba-ibang setting.
Yes. So the scenario that Sir Freddy played, well, he played 10 minutes of it, but the full scenario that he played is in the book. It's called Embers of War. I'm actually running it on Sunday at a tabletop event. Um, uh, there's actually a character that's named after him as one of the first people to die in that scenario. There's actually a
Mhm.
character that's named after him in the final version of it, and the there's four other scenarios, standalone scenarios that are out there.
Mhm.
So Wrath of the Tikbalang, where you get to solve a serial killer mystery in a small rural town in the Philippines. There may or may not be a Tikbalang involved. I will not spoil. Interstellar Nightmare, where you have to go on a space mission to save humanity, which I think is so apt because Project Hail Mary came out just a few weeks ago. So I actually really want to play it again. Then there's Cry of Freedom, where you are rebels in an insurrection and you get to fight through the final battle. And then there's Shadow of the Dragon, where it's your classic D&D scenario where you get to fight a dragon, and of course one of you is going to die fighting the dragon. And people really like that one because you can choose the setting and you can also choose the dragon. And sometimes people are gonna pick, your D&D dragon. Sometimes they'll pick Bakunawa. They're gonna save the moon from getting devoured. uh sometimes they pick a dragon from some kind of literature that I don't know, so I have to do a very quick Google search just to make sure that I run the scenario properly. But it has enough tools for you to be able to handle whatever the players throw at you. And the other scenario that is in the book is wow, I forgot. There's a fifth one. There's a fifth one that I actually
Yeah, you know you'll will remember that later, and then
mm,
you can mention it. But what's interesting with these types of RPGs is it's actually kasi these days pag ako mismo niyayaya ako mag-RPG, I usually have to beg off because I cannot commit to a regular weekly schedule, and then I don't want to hold people up, and that's really a big challenge for a lot of RPG groups. Pagka yung
yeah,
absent this week, absent that next week, iba naman yung absent. You never have a full
good.
party. Yeah, so it's for people like me. I think one shots like these are perfect. So medyo parang nagiging isang session nakakatapos kayo ng isang storya.
Yeah,
And medyo perfect nga yung One of Us Will Die kasi talagang merong ano eh, hindi nyo alam kung sino yung mamamatay. But everybody's
And
trying to be
then,
a hero or something.
everyone wants to be the hero. I think that's what people like about getting to die in the game. Because when you die in this game, you get a lot of narrative control because you get to narrate your death scene. And when they
mm,
narrate their death scene, they can make anything happen. So what most people like to do is they're gonna use the death scene to make their character into a hero. So that's very common in the game, and it's something people really like to do. And I think the thing with one shots with One of Us Will Die, kasi when you do a one shot in another RPG, parang you go into a dungeon, you
Mhm.
get some, you pick up some treasure, and then you leave the dungeon. Parang it doesn't feel like, well, not all the times. I've had some amazing one shots under some really amazing DMs, pero sometimes, especially when I run them, parang it feels medyo bitin, like the story isn't complete.
Mhm.
And what One of Us Will Die does is it grounds the story around this drama involving the death of a character.
Mhm.
Kasi I think as geeks, general geek culture, we're conditioned to not believe the story is over until somebody dies. Yung if you watch like Fellowship of the Ring, Boromir dies at the end. Uh, Force Awakens, Han Solo dies at the end. Like it's spoiler, sorry. um,
Yeah, if at this point they're spoiled by that, I don't think it matters to them.
watch more movies. Yeah.
watch more movies, guys. It's really like the a death. We're conditioned to believe that death marks the end, or at least the beginning of the end of most stories. Even the Gospels in the Bible
Yeah.
get capped off with the death of Jesus. So it's really like we have this way of telling stories because this we see this pattern. So
Yes.
parang a lot of the time One of Us Will Die sessions end with the heroes either looking up at the statue of their friend or a year later, and they're just or oh my, one of the things I love to do, and this always makes people cry. I don't make it the heroes standing in front of the statue. If there was a child or a kid or a group of children that they saved during the adventure, it's the grown-up versions of those kids. They're all adventurous and they're looking up at the statue, and everyone's just like, ah. It's really nice. It's really nice to be able to have a game that really pulls on people's heartstrings. And I'm not the best writer, so I wrote a game that lets uh, the players do most of the narrative work. So I get to feel like I'm doing something.
Yeah. And then yung ano rin, actually in a meta way, like how games are designed right now, it's very much hero centric. Medyo hindi naman Marvel, pero basically medyo superhero yung treatment sa characters. So they're afraid to die, they're afraid kasi yung continuing legacy. So at least
Yeah,
in this
correct.
case, parang coming in your already mindset mo na parang first of all it's a one shot, and then second of all one of you will die.
Yeah.
So coming
Um,
in iba yung decision making mo eh. Like yeah, I'll be a hero, or like this is
It's really
one goal.
it's really crazy how creative players get when they're not trying to protect their characters.
Mm.
And parang I feel like it gets characterized more. The story is so much more interesting when the characters are fighting for something bigger than themselves. That's why the scenarios are like that. The interstellar nightmare, you're saving humanity, you're fighting a dragon, you are stopping a vicious serial killer. Like the scenarios are always like these are causes that at least your characters would die for. And when
Mm.
people are playing characters like that, the heroism and the self-sacrifice and the stuff that comes out is really really fun to watch. And what I really I did not realize this when I wrote the game, but parang the player's own personal desire to change the world or to stand up to their demons or just to be a better person, sometimes it comes out in their characters. And I've had people, they really resonate with their characters. There was this there was a this one session that I had. Somebody was playing the cleric archetype. Uh, so this cleric was trying to pray for a miracle to happen that would uh, save the party. And I really just let the player know, okay, you're putting all your faith in your deity right now. This miracle may or may not happen. Are you willing to bank everything on this? And a lot of their character arc had to do with their faith or just this faith in this thing that is bigger than them, that created them, that they want to believe in. And the player actually was moved to tears because they themselves had issues with their parents at some point, and they have a hard time trusting authority figures or yun, parent figures, and it came out in the cleric. And when the miracle finally happened and the deity intervened and that trust in the parental figure was rewarded, uh the well, it was a really emotional moment for that player. And does this sort of thing happen in real life? No. Well, I mean, not all the time. I know there's some great parents out there, but a lot of the time it doesn't. But parang one of us will die is a different kind of power fantasy. It grants wishes that we didn't know we had, like having something to fight for. And I realized that for a lot of people in this very nihilistic attitude kind of world, having something to die for in itself is already a power fantasy. It's morbid. It's morbid, but believing in something so much that you would risk your life, um, I think is a fantasy that people really cling to these days. It's kind of sad that it's necessary for people to have fantasies like this, but with all the stuff that's going on in the world, sometimes people are suffering from depression. Sometimes people feel incredibly discouraged in their lives. Playing a game about heroism and just believing in your own, like believing in yourself and the people around you, with all that drama surrounding death, I think for a lot of people it's something that they needed.
Mhm.
Yeah, that's the value of play.
Yeah, which is
No, legitimate.
talaga eh.
It's legit.
Play
Yeah.
play is really an integral part of, which is something that we are championing, and not just for as a form of entertainment, but it's also education. It's social emotional release, and it's social glue. So and it you know maraming maraming ways for play to manifest. RPG being one of them.
I
Uh,
agree.
yeah.
And it's
So
it's It's
Mhm.
fun din kasi the game system is based on Jungian archetypes, hero's journey,
Mhm.
literary tropes. It makes references to a lot of books that were required reading for us in high school. So high school students actually really like it because the stuff that they're learning in their English literature classes is very relevant in this game. Even the three-act structure of the hero's journey as they go through the thing, they're all
Mhm.
mechanics,
You can
character
even
archetypes din.
you can even say may onting ano eh, may onting trauma bonding.
No, no, I'm not gonna pretend that there's no trauma bonding and one of us will die. There's
Yeah,
definitely trauma
put
bonding.
put put in a situation.
Mhm.
Definitely put in a situation.
But
I
but
know
that's the
that I
nice thing
know.
about RPGs, 'di ba? You get through that process without actually risking without
Yeah,
physically risking your life or get putting yourself in dangerous situations.
it's funny nga eh. I actually know a few players who became very good friends.
Mhm.
We have a Discord community. Please join the Discord community if you want to play One of Us Will Die.
Yeah.
We have a Discord community. There's so many people there who became friends because they were mourning a dead character,
Hmm.
which is so funny because okay, I mean like I'm not shaming anyone for mourning dead character. I mourn dead characters. I grew up mourning dead characters, but it's so funny how your friendship is just built up over grief for a person who is not real. We have a section of the Discord called the character obituary. When somebody dies, you can write an obituary for them in the character obituary, and sometimes people still read it and they're it's like, oh, I remember him, he saved everyone from blah blah blah. Just want to note, not all of them are heroic sacrifices. There are some players who decided that a more appropriate death of their character was more tragedy than heroism.
Mhm.
Sometimes to really just to drive in the theme of the particular story they were trying to tell. Uh, Wrath of the Tikbalang, there was this one there was this one scenario where a young girl um gets caught by a stray bullet, uh, and that was the death of the game, and it was just tragic. We actually had to stop playing for a while and just like pause for 10 seconds because it was set in the Philippines. It was about how all this violence is actually hurting bystanders, and it felt real for a lot of them, and it was nothing heroic about it. And that's part of the game too. But at the same time, were they mourning a literal child? No. Were they all relating with something that they know happens in this country from every once in a while? Yes. So it felt real, and parang they shared a moment.
Mhm. Have you had players actually, because you said you may heroic, merong tragic, meron
May
bang mga
Gollum-esque death.
gumagawa ng comedic yung death nila?
Yes,
Yung parang, just a series of stupid things gets them killed.
yes. I've actually had really silly deaths before, but what's really funny is it always starts out silly. It
Mm,
always starts out silly, and then I think people are very. It always starts out silly, pero honestly, there is a certain special kind of tragedy when it's the funny character that dies.
Hmm.
Like nobody expects it,
mm,
and we laughed for a while, and then we were just. I mean, we laughed again, but yeah, we've had silly deaths. He died from a he died from a petty fight that he got into with another player. That was his arm snagged on a poison spike the other guy was carrying.
okay.
uh,
Hmm.
there was another one where I know the dragon just lands on him. That's it.
Okay.
As in, like the
Talagang parang
dragon landed.
Monty Python-esque. Ganun.
Yeah, the dragon just landed on him, and everyone else was just inspired. No, and then they killed the dragon.
Actually, we've been talking about the game for a while now, but we haven't actually talked about the game.
Oh wow, yeah.
So, oo nga. Let's give like a short overview. Like, what is One of Us Will Die?
Okay, so One of Us Will Die is a social deduction tabletop role playing game. Um, it's definitely not the first social deduction tabletop role playing game, but it's the first game to call itself that because the core mechanic is a social deduction system where everyone is trying to figure out who the character that's going to die will be. Because there's a certain popularity of TV shows like Demon Slayer, Game of Thrones. What else is famous for killing off characters? Uh, Damn, there's a lot of fantasy, action, adventure stuff that's famous for killing characters. But one of the things my family and I really like to do is we like to take guesses on who is going to die next. And it's just fun. I feel like a lot of people do this. A lot of groups of friends do this. Your favorite character is gonna die in the next one. Oh my god, this person's going to die. If you've seen Avengers Endgame, um, I remember at the end of Thor Ragnarok, Loki had the redemption arc,
Hmm.
and everyone was like, "Oh no, Loki
Who's
got
next?
redeemed, guys. He's next." He's like, parang his role as the villain is not existent anymore. He went through his arc na, and then Avengers Endgame, he dies, and everyone's like, "Oh, what did I tell you guys? What did I tell you?" So
Actually, sa akin, we like doing this to Battle Royale na shows. Like
yes,
Squid
yes,
Game, like
yes.
who's gonna die this episode?
Yeah, stuff like that. Squid Game. Squid Game is a very One of Us Will Die coded TV show. You're always wondering which one of them it's going to be next. I love Squid Game. Um it's so there. There may also be a traitor in the party, and the traitor, instead of um usually because if you can guess who the mark is, you get to replace them. The blaze of glory becomes yours, and you get to be the one that dies in the story and gets to tell what happens at the end. There is a traitor though. The traitor, instead of them dying in the place of the mark, they actually get to decide how the mark dies. So he's taking the narrative control away from the other character, and they're doing it themselves. There are many reasons for the player has to find a reason for their character to do this. Sometimes they're in league with the villain. Sometimes they are not who they say they are. There's actually a scenario that's a stretch goal called Karimlan ng Aswang,
Mhm.
where one of the players is actually an Aswang, and they're the ones who are a tik to be specifically to be specific. They're the ones that are killing the people in this cabin in the woods, and the traitor um is actually that creature, and people are trying to figure out who it is. But more importantly, because this is One of Us Will Die, what you're actually looking for is you want to know who the tick's next victim will be. So it's still in place of trying to guess who's going to die. And you have your usual RPG stuff. You roll dice. There's a 3-act structure. And in order to activate your role, either you make your guess or you narrate your death, you need to hit story milestones. And the story milestones are really integrated into whichever archetype you pick. Like, for example, if you pick the lover archetype, instead of character classes like D&D, we have archetypes. Archetypes are more about the story of the character rather than the character's abilities. So if you pick the lover archetype, your death flags are probably going to be yung make a promise to your other that everything will be okay in the end, because everyone knows the moment the lover tells their loved one that everything will be okay in the end, they're going to die. The moment Tony Stark said, "I love you 3000," it was over. Everyone knew what was going to happen to him. Um, so, that's how the game works.
Mm.
And it's very rules light. It's really all about your narrative and improv capabilities, your storytelling skills, and really trying to see how you can lead this character uh, to a fitting end.
Mhm. So yeah, we've discussed a little bit about how you know how the game goes, and then how what it is, uh, because it's quite kind of different from what Larong Atin usually does when we publish games. We don't really do RPGs, so we're actually very curious yung process mo na dinaanan, going through making One of Us Will Die, yung design process, uh, kailan at what point were you collaborating with the Lone Colossus Games? And then yung basically yung journey netong creation process mo.
Um, well, okay, it was a long process. So, um, what happened was, so it started out as an idea, as most games do. I conceptualized it. I typed down some notes. So, what happened was, I those notes I tried to format them. What I actually did was I actually had a friend. Um, I actually had a friend who did the layout for me. I did not know layouting. I had somebody lay out the character sheets for me, and I actually I started out. I invited Mikey Cuento to lunch. Uh, so it started out with lunch, and now we're 5 days to lunch. So we it started out as a lunch with Mikey. We talked about the game. He was really impressed. He At first I just thought it was just a thing, it was just random idea I had, but Mikey got excited. Um, and we talked about it. We talked about possible things. Um, he actually vetoed some ideas that I had. Like, for example, I actually thought that the game would be initially app led, but uh, he was like disconnect to connect. So now it's all paper. It's all pen and paper now. So you can thank Mikey for that. Um, and after that discussion, he invited me to the next Unpub. So we showed up on Saturday. Uh, Sir Freddy was there. We got to play the game, and when we when we all played the game together, I also learned some more things about the game. Uh, Next was, and a lot of the time, Mikey was really supportive. Like, he kept introducing me to these people who really helped out. He introduced me next to Francis, who founded UP Tabletop. And the next playtesters of the game, the next few weekends, were volunteers from UP Tabletop who just wanted to try out the game. And then after that, we were at conventions, and we went to our first Bacon. Uh, After that, I decided, you know what, maybe it's time. We actually have this game is playable now. I'm okay with other people playing it without me. So I paid a friend of mine to lay out a I paid a friend of mine to lay out a draft of the light version, which is now on itch.io. I released that last year. And then I found out, okay, it would be really nice if we just got this on print, because I found out that a lot of games start out as I still don't know how to say it. Is it Zine or Zine?
The
It's
zines.
zine. It's short
It's
for
Zines. I've been
magazine.
saying Zines the whole time.
It's
So it started
short
out
for
as
magazine.
okay, so zine. I made a zine. And I started selling that at Ren Fair, where I didn't have money for a booth. That actually was really funny. Is one of the things that's kind of crazy about this is I had no money to support this game with, so it was really just either whatever I could scrounge up. Um, when I was at Ren Fair, it was really just Resin Mage who let me hang out at his booth and sell my game there, and that was really just where it started. Um, I also started my Discord where this amazing community was built and people just bonded over these dead characters that they love so much. And yun, after that, uh, I think sometime after last year's All Aboard Express, we had sold 100 copies of the light version, and at this point, I was already looking for a publisher. I emailed everyone, like literally sent emails to all the publishers I could find aggressively, and it came to this point where Josh from Lone Colossus found me um, sending out the he found me sending out the emails and reaching out. He told me that he was running this small indie company, Lone Colossus, which mostly published his work, but he was willing to give me advice and help me out. So I was okay with it. But as time went on, we still haven't found a publisher, and he started to open up more to the idea of publishing somebody else's work. um, he told me that there might be a chance that he could publish One of Us Will Die. Ever since he said that, I haven't left the guy alone. I he heard from me all the time asking about his schedule and when he was free, and how his yearly publishing schedule was looking, just in case he had time for a small Filipino indie game. So Uh, grabe, God bless him talaga. Wouldn't have gotten this far without him. Um, and I think it's just consistent. Josh, Mikey, Toby Abad, Sir Freddy, yeah, even you, Dwayne, have had my back like several times during conventions. Resin Mage, the volunteers at the conventions. One of Us Will Die stands not only on the shoulders of a colossus, but on the kindness of others, to be honest. It's just the community that we have, the tabletop community that we have. It's so strong. We are so willing to pull people up and help other people find their success. And parang we're really just rooting on each other to succeed. And I think that's the only reason this game got anywhere. And 5 days from now, we're going to lunch. And I'm really, really excited for that. And any of you, I know Toby's watching because I see his comments, but if any of the people I mentioned, any of the people I didn't mention who were part of this journey, if you're watching, from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. It's always been a it's always been the stereotype of Filipino communities and culture where we drag each other down, where we do whatever we can to keep our friends and sometimes our enemies from succeeding just because either we don't like them or we're jealous. I think there are people in the tabletop community who are the exact opposite of that. And it's because of these people that these events are so fun to be at.
That's great to hear na organic yung growth, and then that you found your publisher. What's his name again?
Uh, Joshua Rosing of Lone Colossus.
Mm. Okay, so he publishes his own RPGs initially. Tas ikaw yung first na ipapublish niya na hindi kanya.
Oh, I think he's done another one before.
Mm.
Before me. Um, Lone Colossus usually publishes D&D supplements because that's where the money is talaga. D&D. Like D&D is still one of the most popular TTRPGs there, and deservedly so. It's such a big community and such a wide world. They even had that movie recently that I really really liked, and that's where the money is. But every once in a while, he'll publish an indie RPG. He had his own work. He published his own work last year, Wormlings, where you play baby dragons going on adventures. It's really cute, and I actually encourage people to buy that one as well. And then now one of us will die, which is not connected to D&D in any way. And if anyone ever tells me uh, that I somehow did, I will deny it. But yeah, it's a small indie company in the US, and they were kind enough to throw me a bone.
Hmm. Well, I don't think it's just about throwing you a bone. Probably really saw something in it. Maski ako when I first played it, it was very unique, and then I found it interesting. The only reason I wouldn't be, at that point, I'm not courageous enough to do an RPG in the Philippines, is because of the general size of the Philippines as an industry. So something very specific and medyo specialist. It's kind of
Yeah,
hard to like mass produce. So something like that could work with a few hundred copies, but pero I think you found the correct partner because now you have an international audience, and you're exposed to a bigger market. So I think that's really good for you. Not just with the Philippines, di ba? Hindi lang siya pang
mm,
Philippines. Eh. And there are actually a lot of games that I see that when I see them, alam kong hindi sila sa Philippines eh.
mm.
Yung yung
So
audience.
many, so many good designs.
Yeah. We do have a lot of
Ano lang.
good creative designers here that do have talent, but it's just that our local market will not be big enough to support
Agreed.
sustainably. Yeah. So yun eh. We need to create an international audience for our Filipino creators. And I'm really happy that you found your partner in Lone Colossus Games. And then we are hoping the same thing can happen for more Filipino creators. So hopefully ABGF will be a platform for other people na makahanap rin sila ng partners nila na kayang dalhin yung creations nila. So they have, some people probably don't know how to like email everybody, or wala silang ganong connections, or hindi nila alam kung anong gagawin like what you did. So we have to sometimes create that connection. Pero ang galing ng storya mo. So how involved are you still at this point in the marketing? Kasi pag nasa Kickstarter na, I guess everything's done and it's just really marketing now. How heavily involved are you still in the marketing?
Well, actually, no. I'm actually quite involved in the marketing. So
Have you seen
unlike
the
a lot
ads?
of, oh my god, I'm so tired of seeing my face. So I'm sure a lot of other people are too. So I'm very involved in the marketing. I'm the face of the game. And some of them are written by some of them are written by Lone Colossus's marketing people. Some of them are written by me. And they're kind enough to give me to allow me to approve and reject certain ideas, especially since a lot of them revolve around Filipino culture, because the game has that Pinoy angle to it.
Mhm.
So um, they usually pass it by me to make sure they're getting it right. The concept of hugot, which is what the game is built around, um, and even like there's a lot of buzz about the fact that there's Filipino mythological creatures included in the bestiary. I said bestiary, not bestiary, so I can finally um, absolve myself of the wrong pronunciation I used in the ads. But there's Filipino mythological creatures in the bestiary, and they wanted to make sure that they got it right. And what was really funny nga is one of the ads has me sitting down and saying, um, in Filipino folklore, the scariest monsters don't live in caves. They look exactly like us during the day. And a lot of people took that to be a political post. They took it very politically, and I did not correct anyone because they're not wrong. But there are a lot of monsters who look like people here. But yun, stuff like that. Like I had to inform I had to inform my publisher right after, like, you're gonna notice a lot of comments saying that the ad is political. Okay, it's okay. We did not say anything political. It's just that in the Philippines, we also compare corrupt politicians and crooks in the government to aswang because they're monsters, but they look like people. So, like, I had to explain that away pa. Um, yun.
So it's good to hear that you're very much involved in the marketing. I guess that's true for a lot of s- especially with smaller publishers and yung mga indie. Talagang hindi pwedeng ginawa ko na tapos iwan ko na eh. Bahala ka na. You really have to be involved in the whole process. And
Yes, really happy about that.
yung how about the creative process? How involved was Lone Colossus with the creative process?
Um, I'm a massive pain in his back, uh, because my 200-page manuscript of the book, now Josh has to read all of it, and he has to edit everything. And we started with the quick start, we started with the light version. We had a watered down version of the light version, which we eventually released as the quick start, and even that was a nightmare for him to get through because we had to pass it around so many times because he had to deal with my grammar, bad writing, wording things wrong. I'm not very. It's my first game. It's my first game. I've never developed a game in my life, so there were so many mistakes. So but much to my surprise, he didn't change any of my rules. He didn't really ask for a lot of changes. He just wanted everything to be clearer. He wanted everything to be worded in such a way that an international audience would be able to understand it.
Mhm.
Because the way I explain things, it's very Pinoy. It's not gonna. It's not gonna be picked up by everyone the same way. So he's really helping me. Like, I understand it's in English. Like a lot of people around the world speak English, but the way we speak English is different from the way they speak English. So we had to find a way that portrays the same rules. It's the same game, but it's in a more internationally accepted kind of way of explaining. I think you'd be familiar with, how European and American board games have completely different ways of explaining the rules. So yeah. Joey knows what I'm talking about. Um, it had to be more similar and using the syntax of a more Western tabletop role playing game, which is good because that will make it more consumable. But apart from that, no changes.
Yeah.
I He's been so respectful of the material. I'm actually really happy with like the amount of creative freedom that I've been given, even all the promises that I made to the followers, all the promises that I made, like the fact that it would have 10 scenarios, five of which would have a complete story, the bestiary, 20, I don't know, 15 to 20 archetypes. It was, I was able to keep all those promises because they gave me that kind of control over the material.
Mm.
And so, actually, na bring up na rin, since your primary playtesters were basically the local community. And in so many words, kamusta yung, how do you find the local community now, like the RPG community? Kasi I
Oh,
bet most of the people
wow.
who were, yung lang, the ones who tried it out are mostly like D&D 5 years, or people who haven't actually played, or, yun is, it's either like, they only know D&D, or wala silang experience at all. Or
Oh my
board
God.
gamers, or,
Yeah. There's two kinds of people, right? There's two kinds of people. There's people who like D&D. There's people who have never played a role-playing game. In the Philippines, the most successful and most popular role-playing game, as it is in many other places in the world, is Dungeons and Dragons for valid reason. It's very easy to get. You can get your copy at National Bookstore, Neutral Grounds, or Fully Book. So uh, anyone can play it. What I didn't realize is that both of them would like the game for different reasons. The D&D players, either one, they're tired of D&D, and the thing with D&D, because it's not a very number crunchy game, but there is number crunch in it. And especially when you get to the higher levels, like level 15, level 20, the higher ones, you have so many spells, you have so many stats, you have so many pieces of paper that has everything on it, to the point that sometimes players get overwhelmed. Some people deliberately don't level up their characters. Another thing that popularized D&D is Baldur's Gate 3. You can only get to level 12 in Baldur's Gate 3, because beyond level 12, it's crazy. It doesn't make any sense. Your character's God, basically, but also with a lot of rules. So, a lot of D&D players enjoyed a more rules light RPG, and something that uh, really encouraged narrative role playing. In fact, this is what people in the tabletop RPG space call a narrative RPG, because it's all about what happens to your character, and why does your character do these things, what fate befalls them, instead of what can your character do. uh, it's less about overcoming challenges and more about telling the story. And then there's people who haven't played RPGs. um, there are a lot of people who actually have had One of Us Will Die as their first RPG, and they said it was easier for them to get into than say Dungeons and Dragons, because they tried it out. There's you have to cross reference the player's handbook with the character sheet. In One of Us Will Die, the character sheet is just a checklist and fill in the blanks. So it's easier, and they actually managed to get a foothold. I was actually talking to somebody a week ago. He told me that I got his girlfriend into tabletop RPGs. And I was like, really? I've never met your girlfriend. How could I do that? And he was like, oh, we played your game. And she finally got into it. I ran One of Us Will Die at a school once, and one of their teacher actually approached me and said, when my students want to play D&D after school, I think this is actually the game they want to play, because there's a lot of D&D media content out there, like Critical Role, the D&D movie and stuff like that, where it's all drama. Like, there's so much drama. There's romance, there's drama, there's action. And then when people play D&D on their own, they find out that the experience is different when the table are not composed of professional actors.
Yeah.
Because when you
Yeah.
watch Roll20, everyone at the table is a professional actor. They're all really good at storytelling. So of course it has all that high octane drama, but a lot of people have a hard time creating that with a normal D&D game, because they themselves don't have the training. The DM doesn't have the training. Not everyone can be Matt Mercer. Uh, but in a narrative TTRPG, like One of Us Will Die, and many of the other narrative TTRPGs out there, um, they there's a guide, there's a character archetype, there's milestones, there's story goals that you have to hit. It teaches you how to lead your character to make it dramatic. And of course there's the whole death thing. Death always makes everything more dramatic.
Yeah, so one of the reasons why I brought it up din kasi is, yun nga. So, this May, we're gonna have the Asian Board Games Festival here in the Philippines, and then a lot of basically these are board gamers. So we trying out because there's gonna be a small RPG section. It's you, it's Kara. There are a few zine people actually. So iba-iba rin, like hindi sila exactly like RPGs per se, may miniatures, then agnostic, ganun. And then these are different avenues of gaming, of playing games. Like, hindi lang sila board games. So, parang we're excited to share this piece of the culture then to the rest of the board gamers. And actually, even by nature, the whole event actually is kind of casual in a sense. So we're
Yeah.
expecting a lot of
I
people.
like that. I think that's how it should be talaga. It's games, guys.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly. And then yung ano rin, like, basically, there's a big chance na one of us will die will be their first experience in a tabletop role-playing setting. So, and then, parang ano lang, I just wanted to highlight that part. Kasi, yeah, for a lot of the Filipinos, board gaming, RPG, miniatures, card games, first time pa lang nila, even up until now. So, sobrang storied na nung history. But
I
literally,
think
when they go
it's
there, it's their first game ever. Ganun siya lagi.
I think it's a great way to get your kids off their screens.
Yeah, it's amazing actually. You get them hooked and then, and then they make their own legacies. Parang ito yung lore, I'll pass it down to my kid. It's my first ever game. And then it happens to be your
Actually,
game.
what's really fun
Yeah.
na is a
Eh,
lot of players like journaling. They like
Hmm.
journaling their tabletop RPGs, and when I find out that some people have one of us will die journals where they log down
Cool.
all the characters they
Hmm.
play in one shots, like that's really nice. I really like that.
Oh, that's amazing actually. Yeah. Yung feeling of ano, people remember me. At the same time, it's a very good ano rin kasi. Like one shots, I am a proponent of, I'm a 1 to 5 shot guy. Like hindi ko, I don't like really long campaigns din talaga. Kasi the
Yeah,
narratives
yeah,
are, it's nice to
yeah.
move on from time to time. Ganun. And ang hirap na eh, nagiging siyang cumbersome at some point. So, yeah. This is a great
Yeah.
starting
Tsaka
point
yun
for
nga yung sinabi ni Titus kanina eh, yun after a certain level, your characters tend to become like hindi nag-scale properly,
hmm.
'di ba? Tapos parang you're invincible and then your equipment's so good and then it doesn't make sense. The game doesn't make sense anymore. You become like One Punch Man in your universe. So
yeah.
it
Hmm.
becomes
Although
absurd.
I want to add, One of Us Will Die does have a campaign mode. It will be in the book when it comes out, and the way that
Mhm.
campaign mode works, is that the way that it works is you don't hit exp from killing enemies. You hit exp by hitting story goals, by reaching
Hmm.
milestones, by having dramatic moments, character development. In an anime, you can have a character that just keeps killing, but they only get stronger when they have a character development moment. So it's trying to
Mm.
emulate that kind of thing. So yes, there's a campaign mode where your character gets more powerful. And during my last campaign, the characters were pretty powerful at the end. They were really strong, and I actually think that they had a really good chance of killing the big bad evil guy at the end. But what made the ending so meaningful was, regardless of how strong they got, one of them still died. And even if they keep thinking, oh, I can cast how many fireballs in a day, I can I could destroy a building with a snap of my finger. Even if they were saying that, they know deep down they cannot stop the death that is coming at the end, and they don't know who among them it's going to be. And that was the source of their drama. That's what kept the entire thing so tense for them. uh, I think half the table was crying at the end of that one. We had a lot of fun. They're actually not watching this stream right now because they are playing.
Mm.
Even when I'm not around, they're still playing. So it's really really fun. And you're right. The game mechanics in RPGs do get kind of broken towards the end, but I think what I did with that problem, my solution to that problem with this game is you cannot stop the death, which is the entire point of the game. Death is a part of life. It's inevitable. Regardless if it comes to you now or later, it will happen. And because of that, grief itself is also inevitable, which is why the game is also very much about grief.
Mm. So, well, our the hour is almost over, so we'll have to wrap it up. I know we can talk a whole lot more about games, and I guess we'll just end with inviting people to come to ABGF Asian Board Games Festival May 2 to 3 by Anihan Center. you will get to see and you will get to play. They will get to play. One of us will die there sa table ni Titus. And then you will also get to see a lot of indie creators and publishers there. Asian Board Games Festival is going to focus on these smaller publishers. Wala kayong makikitang big publishers. We really, it's something deliberate that we've tried to do para hindi ma-overshadow. So wala kayong makikitang malalaking publishers that will have big releases or meron tayong mga event exclusives. You won't see things like that. But if you're the kind of person who likes to explore and find new things and not just the things that the internet tells you to look for, I think ABGF will be for you. So Titus, could you also tell people what to expect at the table of One of Us Will Die?
So yeah, expect a really fun tabletop RPG that's really nice to that's really easy to get into. You don't have to cross-reference any player handbook or anything like that. Just fill in the blanks, enjoy the story, tell us what your character does, and probably tell us how they die at the end. If you don't have time to play a full one shot, just ask for a demo. I can run a demo character creation for you. That also has value. A lot of people enjoyed doing that at All Aboard and the Greasy Snitches event just a few weeks back, and we're really excited to see you all there.
Yeah. So we've also linked the Kickstarter link in the comment section. So hanapin nyo na lang, click through kung if you're interested in One of Us Will Die. How about you, Dwayne? Any last words? We're a little bit over time, but not too much.
Yeah, so ayan lang. So thank you for having us. Sorry. So we're glad to have Titus with us. So the ABGF podcast continues next week. So we have a few more announcements. I think we can fit in 2 more episodes. And for now, so this is the RPG section, I guess, and the crowdfunding section. If you want
Oh
to
yeah.
talk to Titus more directly, you can just also follow yung campaign page nila sa Kickstarter. It's still on Notify right now kasi hindi pa siya launch. But
Yep,
in
yep, yep.
5 days, mag-launch na siya.
Please
Just feel free
follow.
to message him. Yeah, or notify me. May ganun pa. Yeah,
Also, the game will
so
be
that's
live
it.
by
So,
the time the game will be live by the time the event comes. So yeah, if you see us there
yeah.
and you haven't funded the game yet, please back it.
Yeah. Actually, Titus isn't the only one na may Kickstarter pa lang na game. One of our, I think, our future guests is also running their Kickstarter pa lang din around that time.
Oh
So
yeah, I'm
that's
not
gonna
the
be
only
from
one.
Singapore then. So they're just going there to demo their games para if you like it, back it on Kickstarter.
Mhm.
And
Wala,
basically,
wala pa
this
rin
is
sa
our...
kasi,
Hmm? Wala pala. Yes. So
yeah.
this is our Larong Atin Hour. So thank you for joining us at the Asian Board Games Festival Philippines podcast. And then thank you, Titus, for joining us again. And we'll see you next week. So announcements agad maybe soonest. And yeah, so thank you everyone. And then drop messages here or message Titus directly. And we'll see you next week. Okay, bye bye.
Bye bye.